There's something about hotels that's always unsettled me. Maybe it's the way every room looks just like the last, or how the sheets are crisp but never quite feel clean. Maybe it's the knowledge that no matter how much you pay, you're always sleeping in a bed that's been used by hundreds, maybe thousands of strangers before you. You never really know who or what was in your room before you checked in. The walls are thin, the hallways echo, and sometimes in the middle of the night, you hear things you can't explain. Tonight, I'm going to share 3 true stories that will make you think twice before you ever slide that keycard into a hotel door again. These aren't just ghost stories, they're warnings. Because after you hear what happened to these people, you'll never look at hotel rooms the same way again. So, if you think you're brave enough, keep listening. But don't say I didn't warn you. The real terror is just beginning. I travel a lot for work, so much that hotels have started to blur together. It's the same beige walls, the same generic art, the same slightly stale air. But there's one hotel I'll never forget. It was in a small city I'd never visited before, the kind of place that's proud of its history. The hotel was a grand old building, all red brick and ornate ironwork, with a lobby that smelled faintly of lemon polish and something older, something musty, the kind of place that's seen better days but still clings to its faded elegance. I checked in late after a long day of meetings. The woman at the front desk was polite, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She handed me a heavy brass key, no key cards here, and told me I'd be in room 409, up at the end of the hall. I remember thinking it was odd that she hesitated before saying the room number, but I was too tired to care. The elevator creaked as it carried me up, the old-fashioned kind with a metal gate you have to slide shut yourself. The hallway on the 4th floor was dim, the carpet worn thin in the middle. My footsteps echoed as I walked, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I told myself it was just the age of the place, the way old buildings seem to hold on to memories. Room 409 was at the very end, next to a window that looked out over the city. The door was heavy, and it took a couple of tries to get the key to turn. Inside, the room was fine. Clean enough, but with that faint, lingering scent of old smoke and something else, something metallic, maybe. The wallpaper was peeling in one corner, and the radiator under the window clanked and hissed like it was alive. I set my bag down and tried to shake off the unease. I told myself I was just tired, that I'd feel better after a shower and some sleep. But as I unpacked, I noticed the air felt colder near the bed, almost as if there was a draft. I checked the window, but it was shut tight. I even ran my hand along the wall, half expecting to find a vent or a crack, but there was nothing. That night, I lay in bed listening to the radiator's irregular clanking and the distant hum of city traffic. I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember is waking up suddenly. Heart pounding, with the sense that someone was standing at the foot of the bed. I couldn't see anything in the darkness, but the cold was worse now, seeping through the blankets and into my bones. I told myself it was just a nightmare, that I was being ridiculous, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I turned on the bedside lamp and the room looked normal, empty, still. But as I tried to fall back asleep, I heard a faint whisper, so soft I almost thought I imagined it. It sounded like someone saying my name. I sat up, straining to listen, but all I could hear was the radiator and my own breathing. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off. I told myself it was just the stress of travel, the weirdness of sleeping in a strange bed. But when I went to the bathroom, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The mirror above the sink was fogged up, even though I hadn't taken a shower yet. In the condensation, there was a word written, as if traced by a finger. Stay. I wiped it away, heart racing. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, or maybe a leftover from the last guest. But the feeling of being watched only got stronger as the day went on. Every time I returned to the room, the air felt colder, heavier. I started leaving the TV on for background noise, just to break the silence. That night I tried to keep the lights on, but they flickered and went out around midnight. I lay in the dark, listening to the radiator, when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, stopping right outside my door. I held my breath, waiting for the sound to move on, but it didn't. Instead, there was a soft, scratching noise, like fingernails dragging across the wood. I wanted to call the front desk, but my phone had no signal. The room phone was dead too, just static on the line. I sat there paralyzed as the scratching continued, then stopped. Silence. I finally worked up the courage to look through the peephole, but the hallway was empty. I barely slept. When I finally drifted off, I had the most vivid, unsettling dream. I was standing in the hallway outside my room, watching myself sleep through the door. There was someone else in the room with me, a shadowy figure standing at the foot of the bed, just watching. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I woke up gasping, drenched in cold sweat. The room was freezing, colder than before. I could see my breath in the air. And then I saw it, a shape darker than the shadows, standing in the corner by the window. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The figure just stood there, its face hidden, but I could feel its eyes on me. The cold grew sharper, almost painful, and then, just as suddenly, it was gone. I checked out that morning, barely able to look the desk clerk in the eye. She didn't ask why I was leaving early. She just nodded, as if she already knew. As I walked out, I glanced back at the fourth-floor window. For a split second, I thought I saw a pale face staring down at me from room 49. I don't know what happened in that room or who or what was trying to get my attention. All I know is I'll never stay in that hotel again. And if you ever find yourself in room 409, don't ignore the cold spots. Don't brush off the whispers. Some rooms remember, some things never check out. It's easy to dismiss stories like that as tricks of the mind, old buildings settling, a restless imagination, maybe just a bad dream. But there's a reason so many people are afraid of ghosts. It's the idea that something unseen, something we can't control, might be watching us when we're most vulnerable. Still, as terrifying as the supernatural can be, there's another kind of fear that's even harder to shake. Because sometimes it's not the dead you have to worry about in a hotel. Sometimes it's the living. And what happened to the next guest proves that the scariest things don't always come from the other side. I'd always thought that staying in a nice hotel meant you were safe. It's a kind of place with marble floors, soft lighting, and a front desk staff that greets you by name. I was in the city for a conference, and my company had splurged on a room in one of those glass and steel towers that seemed to rise out of nowhere. Everything was spotless, efficient, and just a little too perfect, like a showroom that people only pretended to live in. I checked in late, after a long flight and a cab ride through rain-slick streets. The lobby was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of an elevator and the distant clink of glasses from the bar. My room was on the 12th floor, with a view of the city lights and blackout curtains that sealed out the world. I remember thinking how anonymous it all felt, like I could disappear here and no one would notice. The first night was uneventful. I ordered room service, watched TV, and fell asleep to the gentle whoosh of the air conditioning. But the next morning, as I left for my meetings, I noticed a man standing at the end of the hallway. He was tall, with dark hair and a suit that looked a little too big for him. He didn't seem to be waiting for the elevator or heading to a room. He was just standing there, hands in his pockets, staring at the carpet. I brushed it off. Maybe he was waiting for someone, or just lost in thought. But when I came back that evening, he was there again, in the same spot. This time, he looked up as I walked past. His eyes met mine for a split second, cold, flat, and unblinking. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I forced myself to smile and keep walking. I told myself I was being paranoid. That night, I double-checked the lock on my door, even wedged a chair under the handle just in case. I tried to laugh it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The hotel was so quiet, the kind of silence that makes every sound seem louder. I kept thinking about the man in the hallway, wondering if he was still out there. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate, pausing every few steps. I held my breath, listening as they stopped right in front of my room. There was a soft shuffling, like someone shifting their weight from foot to foot. Then, a gentle tap, barely more than a whisper on the door. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. I waited, barely daring to breathe, as the tapping continued. After what felt like forever, the footsteps moved on, fading down the hallway. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, every muscle tense. The next morning I went to the front desk and asked if there had been any security patrols on my floor the night before. The clerk shook her head, frowning. "No, ma'am. Was there a problem?" I hesitated, not wanting to sound crazy, but I described the man I'd seen. She glanced at her computer, then back at me. "We don't have anyone matching that description staying here. I'll let security know." I tried to put it out of my mind. Maybe he was a guest. Maybe he checked out. But that night, as I returned to my room, I saw him again. This time, he was closer, just a few doors down from mine. He didn't look at me, but I could feel his eyes following me as I fumbled with my key. I hurried inside, locked the door, and pressed my back against it, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of an elevator bell. I called the front desk again, my voice shaking. They promised to send someone up, but when security arrived, the hallway was empty. No sign of the man, no indication that anyone had been there at all. I felt foolish, but the fear wouldn't leave me. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, expressionless, almost blank, but with something hungry behind his eyes. Around 3 a.m., I heard it again. Footsteps, slow and measured, stopping outside my door. This time, there was no tapping, just silence, thick and suffocating. I grabbed my phone and dialed the front desk, whispering that someone was outside my room. They told me to stay put, that security was on the way. I waited, clutching the phone, listening as the footsteps finally moved away. When security arrived, they found nothing. No one on the cameras, no one in the hallway. The next morning I checked out early, my nerves frayed and my hands shaking. As I waited for the elevator, I glanced down the hallway one last time. The man was there, standing at the far end, watching me. I blinked and he was gone. I don't know who he was or what he wanted. Maybe he was just a figment of my imagination, a product of too many late nights and too much caffeine. Or maybe he was something else. Something that slips through the cracks in places where no one really knows your name. All I know is, I've never felt so alone, or so watched, as I did in that perfect impersonal hotel. And sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you can't see. It's what's standing right in front of you, waiting for you to notice. There's a special kind of fear that comes from knowing you're being watched. When every shadow feels like a pair of eyes, and every footstep in the hallway could be someone with the worst intentions. It's the kind of fear that lingers long after you've left, making you check over your shoulder in every empty corridor. But as unsettling as it is to be stalked by something human, there's another kind of horror that's even harder to escape. If you thought that last story was disturbing, just wait. The next one will make you question what's real and what's just a trick of the mind. Because sometimes the scariest things in a hotel room aren't out in the hallway, right there with you, staring back from the other side of the glass. My girlfriend, Harper, and I had been planning our getaway for months, a weekend escape from work, stress, and the endless noise of the city. We picked a boutique hotel on the edge of a quiet coastal town, the kind of place with exposed brick, quirky art, and a reputation for being charmingly unique. When we checked in, the desk clerk smiled and told us we'd been upgraded to their signature suite. At the time, it felt like a stroke of luck. The room was beautiful, with high ceilings, a king-size bed, and a balcony overlooking the ocean. But what caught our attention immediately was the mirror. It stretched across the entire wall opposite the bed, framed in dark, carved wood. It was old, maybe antique, and the glass had that slightly warped look. Like it had seen too many years and too many faces. Harper laughed and called it the selfie wall. I tried to laugh with her, but something about it made me uneasy. I told myself I was being silly. The first night, we unpacked, ordered takeout, and watched the sun set from the balcony. The mirror caught the last light of the day, turning the room gold and then deep blue. As we got ready for bed, Harper stood in front of the mirror, making faces and snapping photos. I watched her reflection, noticing how the glass seemed to ripple, just for a second, as if the room on the other side was breathing. I blinked, and it was gone. That night I woke up to the sound of whispering. At first I thought it was Harper talking in her sleep, but when I turned over, she was facing away from me, breathing slow and steady. The whispers were soft, almost like the wind, but I could swear they were coming from the mirror. I sat up staring at our reflections in the dim light. For a moment I thought I saw someone else standing behind us, a shadow, tall and thin, just out of focus. I blinked again, and it was just us. The next morning, I didn't mention it. I didn't want to ruin the trip with my weird dreams. We spent the day exploring the town, eating ice cream, and taking photos by the water. But when we got back to the room, Harper seemed distracted. She kept glancing at the mirror, frowning. When I asked her what was wrong, she shrugged it off. I keep thinking I see something move in there. It's like out of the corner of my eye. She laughed, but it sounded forced. That night, things got stranger. We were lying in bed, scrolling through our phones, when Harper suddenly sat up. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I listened, but all I could hear was the distant sound of waves. "It's probably just the wind," I said. But she shook her head. No, it was. It was like someone whispering my name. She looked at the mirror, her face pale in the moonlight. "I don't like that thing." I tried to joke about it, but the room felt colder, heavier. I got up and pulled the curtains over the mirror, but the fabric was thin and didn't cover it completely. I could still see our shapes, distorted and dark, in the glass. That night, I dreamed I was standing in front of the mirror, but my reflection didn't move with me. It just stared, eyes wide and empty, while I pounded on the glass trying to get its attention. When I woke up, Harper was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the mirror. "I had the worst dream," she whispered. "I was trapped in there. I could see you, but you couldn't see me." We tried to laugh it off, but neither of us could shake the feeling that something was wrong. We spent as little time in the room as possible, but every time we came back, the air felt heavier, the shadows deeper. The mirror seemed to watch us, reflecting things that didn't quite match reality. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of movement in the glass, a flicker of a hand, a face, something that vanished when I looked straight at it. On our last night, we decided to push the bed against the far wall, as far from the mirror as possible. We left the lights on, hoping it would help. Round midnight, Harper shook me awake. "Look," she whispered, pointing at the mirror. I sat up, heart pounding. In the glass, our reflections were standing, side by side, staring back at us. But we were still in bed. I watched, frozen, as the reflections slowly turned to face each other, their mouths moving in silent conversation. Harper grabbed my hand, her grip ice cold. "We need to leave," she whispered. I nodded, and we scrambled to pack our things, never taking our eyes off the mirror. As we reached the door, I glanced back one last time. Our reflections were still there, but now they were smiling, wide, unnatural smiles that didn't reach their eyes. We left the hotel in the middle of the night, driving until the sun came up. We didn't talk about what happened. not really. Every time I try to remember that night, the details slip away like a dream fading in the morning light. But sometimes, when I catch my reflection in a window or a darkened screen, I see something in my eyes that wasn't there before. A flicker of something watching, waiting. I don't know what was in that mirror or what it wanted from us. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, or our minds playing games after too many ghost stories. Or maybe, just maybe, there are places where the line between our world and something else is thinner than we think. All I know is, if you ever find yourself in a hotel room with a mirror that feels just a little too old, a little too knowing, don't look too long. And whatever you do, don't let your reflection smile first. There is something deeply unsettling about being afraid in a place that is supposed to be safe. Hotels are meant to be a refuge, a place to rest, to escape, to feel anonymous and untouched by the world outside. But as these stories show, the unknown can find us anywhere, even behind locked doors and crisp white sheets. Maybe it's the history soaked into the walls, the endless parade of strangers, or just the simple fact that we're never truly alone, no matter how much we want to believe it. It's easy to laugh off a cold spot, a strange noise, or a fleeting shadow in the corner of your eye. But when you're lying awake in a strange room, every sound seems louder, every shadow deeper, and every reflection a little too real. The truth is, we never really know what happened in the rooms before us, or what lingers after the lights go out. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what we see, but what we can't explain. If you've ever had a hotel experience that left you shaken, I want to hear about it. Share your own stories in the comments, because the more we talk about these things, the less power they have over us. Or maybe, the more we talk, the more we realize just how much we don't know. So next time you check into a hotel, take a moment to look around. Listen to the silence. Trust your instincts. And remember, some doors are better left closed.